Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we have seen come to the surface with respect to the gun control debate after that tragic and senseless shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School there in Parkland, Broward County, Florida, is that there has been a renewed push to have gun control take center stage in the land of the free and the home of the brave once again. And it's unfortunate that we are here because it's the same tired song and dance that we see time and time again, to the point of it reaching ad nauseum in the immediate wake and aftermath of one of these senseless tragedies. And the reason that it keeps coming forth is that we have these dark, twisted, and dare I say maniacal forces on either side of the political spectrum, I hate to say, that wish to seize upon these sorts of tragedies. They try and sit there and make political hay out of it. They want to not allow a tragedy or a crisis to go to waste. I mean, they're essentially following the mandate put forth by Kat Sunstein, that frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist who always embraced the rules for radicals approach that was first brought to the attention of the American public by that frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist who composed the Fabian Socialist Bible, that of Rules for Radicals, one Saul Alinsky. And what it boils down to is they want power. They want corruption. They want control so that the people will turn to the government on bended knee to essentially beg the government to provide them a solution for a problem that government created in the first place. Now, I know that my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, and I have oftentimes reiterated on previous episodes of our state-of-the-art radio program that gun-free zones have been the problem. You can go back through the archives of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and see that we have been consistent in our approach and claim for almost 3 years. It will be 3 years in September. I know that's still a fair ways away, but we have always said that these gun-free zones are the root of the problem, not the inanimate object, the gun itself. A gun is a tool. Much as a hammer is a tool, or a screwdriver is a tool, and it cannot have evil characteristics. It cannot have a magical power as the left and some on the right would like to ascribe to it, because it is an inanimate object. It has always been an inanimate object. It is not a sentient being. It does not have a mind of its own. Hell, it doesn't even have artificial intelligence. So what we see is that the left, and unfortunately, increasingly, many on the right, are coming forth and are arguing from a position of raw emotionalism, hysteria. And these histrionics are really putting this nation in jeopardy, because what they are seeking to do is to strip and deprive decent, law-abiding American citizens of their fundamental and inalienable God-given right to keep and bear firearms, as is protected by the clear and concise language of the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights, or first 10 amendments to our shared United States Constitution. And so when we stop and think about this, under the totality of the circumstances and in an objective fashion, one of the things that keeps coming to the surface is how they want to say that it's easy access to firearms that create the sorts of mass shooting incidents that we have seen. But that's just not the case. When we look at the actual data, it's quite amazing. The Crime Research Institute had put out a study that between the period of 1953 and 2017, 98.4% of mass shooting incidents within the land of the free and the home of the brave occurred in, you guessed it, gun-free zones. Now, what is it that made gun-free zones even worse than what they used to be? What is it that brought that to the epicenter? Why are we so focused on that? Well, it was a failed policy position by those on the left seeking to strip and deprive law-abiding citizens of their ability to protect themselves and to protect their family, friends, loved ones. You know, the legal defense known as defense of others, that they created gun-free zones. It was under Janet Reno that schools were fully clamped down upon, fully instituted as gun-free zones. And we can see that that is nothing short of a debacle. It's a fiasco, a disaster of biblical proportions. Yet this is what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have done. They are the ones that have made things less safe. It is their dark, twisted, and dare I say even tyrannical penchant for abridging the fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of the people that lead to these unsafe conditions. You know, back in the 1950s and 60s, even through the 70s and 80s, there would be vehicles in high school parking lots that would have gun racks in the back, and they'd have their hunting rifles and shotguns. And even within the various schools, there would be sharpshooting teams. There'd be shooting practice, recreational shooting. But somewhere along the way, throughout these past several successive generations and decades, we've gotten away from that. We've gotten to where we treat law-abiding, gun-owning American citizens as though they are a criminal element, as though we cannot trust them to exercise their fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. But you see, there's a major problem with all of this. And the major problem of which I speak is that whenever we look at our rights, and whenever we look at depriving rights, particularly fundamental and inalienable rights, the presumption of innocence is always supposed to be there. We're supposed to have due process before those rights can be removed from us. But that's not the way things have been operating, particularly throughout the course of the past several successive generations. No. We are forced to prove our innocence. And to me, that is alien. To me, that is foreign with respect to the way that American culture and society and our customs are to be exerted and exercised and seen by not only ourselves, but also the greater world at large. Why is it that just because there is an emotional sense here, that we all of a sudden turn around and cast aspersions on law-abiding American citizens? Folks, it has gotten so bad that I have noticed in the annals of social media, friends of mine who were colleagues back when I was in law school were sitting there saying, because the National Rifle Association, or NRA, has gone forth to bring a lawsuit against Governor Rick Snyder of the great Sunshine State of Florida for his proposed gun control ban, that they are now, and they use this hashtag, and I quote, hashtag homegrown terrorists. Wait a minute. When did it become in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave, that we are homegrown terrorists if we are going out of our way to protect our fundamental and inalienable God-given right as contained in the four corners and clear and concise language of the Second Amendment to our shared United States Constitution. That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Unfortunately, this is the mindset that has started to grip so many in these United States of America, particularly as of late. And there's something suspicious about all of this, ladies and gentlemen. It makes me wonder, how did we lose sight of our rights? How is it that these dark, twisted, depraved, and dare I say, nefarious forces have come forth and have managed to change the minds of so many? You know, look at David Hogg, the Marjorie Stoneman student there. I'm not going to call him a crisis actor. I know that's been debunked, but he was certainly coached. And there's certainly something about this massive, instantaneous push for gun control in the immediate wake and aftermath of that senseless and unspeakable tragedy. And yes, folks, it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy of epic proportions. But the anger and the emotional knee-jerk reaction is placing that anger in the wrong place. They are targeting the wrong things. They are addressing the wrong things. What they should be addressing is the actual thing that created the problem, or the issue, as my first officer Jeremy Grapington would rather put it, as problems do not have solutions, arises from the gun-free zones. We place students in a precarious position. Now, part of the so-called Marjorie Stoneman Douglas gun control act that was pushed through the Florida Senate and House and signed into law by Governor Scott said we should arm teachers. Okay, that's a start. But there are other elements to that which are totally unconstitutional. And those elements of which I speak are the attempts to prohibit individuals who are under the age of 21 from purchasing firearms and ammunition. Now, folks, there's a couple of things we have to keep in mind as to why this all of a sudden creates the whole protected class issue. Part of the 14th Amendment to our shared United States Constitution is the Equal Protection Clause. That means that your rights come to you when you reach the age of majority, which has traditionally been 18 years of age. As an 18-year-old, you're able to start a business, get married, own property. You can sign up to vote, and part of that, if you are a male, is to sign up for selective services to potentially be selected for the draft. It means that you can be entrusted to go and fight and die for your country. That means that these 18-year-olds are entrusted with fully automatic M16s. But we're now going to tell them if they are citizens or domiciliaries, meaning that they are citizens and residents of the state of Florida, that we can entrust them to go fight and die for our country. But we can't entrust them to defend their own home? Why? Just because of something as arbitrary and capricious as age? That's not good. That goes contrary to the entire impetus, point, and purpose of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, and therefore it is a bad thing. This is not a development that would be in the best interest of the land of the free and the home of the brave. And this is why even those stores and outlets like Dick's Sporting Goods and Walmart that said that they would, arbitrarily move forth and place these restrictions on anyone under the age of 21 has brought a lawsuit. It's resulted in a lawsuit. Why? Because he's being discriminated against, the one bringing the suit, who is a former employee of Dick's Sporting Goods. They're depriving him of his rights. You see, the Second Amendment to the Constitution applies to all states. This has already been established as an individual right, and as long as you are doing it for a lawful purpose, it can extend to any type of firearm. That's certainly the decision of D.C. v. Heller and McDonald v. Chicago. But we are now moving to encroach or infringe upon the Second Amendment rights of decent, law-abiding American citizens. Why? Because we think that it will somehow stop a madman like Cruz or like, Dylan Storm Roof. No. Madmen will always continue to inflict as much harm, chaos, and destruction as is humanly possible. They are depraved. They are hateful. They do not speak to the attributes of average law-abiding American citizens. And if you stop and think about it, just based on the amount of firearms that are out there in American society and in America's public, if the vast majority of gun-owning American citizens were acting in an irresponsible fashion with their firearms, we would see shootings on a much grander scale. It would be a daily occurrence or a daily event. But that's simply not the case. It's not. Of course, the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media have been going out and have been fudging the numbers, for lack of a better term, trying to make it seem as though we've had far more mass shooting incidents than we have in all of 2018 thus far. And the other thing that they do is part of what they count is part of gun violence is suicides and accidents. That's not gun violence. But you see, that's what they do. That's how they push their dark, twisted, and intellectually disingenuous narrative. It's propaganda. Plain and simple, it is propaganda, and it has no place in a decent, honest, open, but above all, free society like that of these United States of America. Yet this is what they do. This is how they react. It's all, once again, emotional drivel. It's all designed to impact the fundamental and inalienable rights of law-abiding citizens. Why? Because, again, they want to create a certain pattern, a certain belief system, something that is not within society itself, or a part of who we are as a nation and people. It's insane, yes, and it's dangerous, yes, as well. Why? Because, again, it is designed to utilize the tried and true, albeit threadbare, tactic and strategy of divide and conquer against the good and decent people of these United States of America. But, ladies and gentlemen, the question that we need to ask ourselves, particularly now, is why is it that they never address the underlying, overarching issue of gun-free zones? I think the reason that they don't is because, again, this is not about safety. It's not about keeping our children safe. It's not about securing the up-and-coming generations of this country. It's about power. We see it time and again. We look at the 1994 so-called assault weapons ban. Did it do anything? Did it really benefit the American people? No. All it did was punish law-abiding American citizens. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to make us out to be social pariahs. Why? Because that fits their political narrative and agenda perfectly. That allows them to have the opening and the opportunity to continue to push against our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because at the end of the day, this is what they have done for generation after successive generation, time and time again, without fail. It is what they propagate and push and desire and demand. And we, as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, are the ones left holding the bag. Again, it's all designed to weaken the American people. That is what it comes down to. That is their ultimate end goal and desire. But enough is enough. We need to place our collective foot down as a nation and people, because if we start giving them an inch, they're going to take the whole damn country. That is their modus operandi. It's been their modus operandi for years and years. How can we forget that Eric Holder said that essentially what they wanted to do was to paint American gun owners as the same type of pariahs as they have managed to do with users of tobacco. Think about that for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Think about the impact that that has. Tobacco, unlike firearms, however, is not a constitutionally protected right. The possession, utilization, keeping, and bearing of firearms, and all of the accoutrements that are necessary to use them, is a constitutionally protected right. And the reason it is that our founding fathers, in their sagacity and near infinite wisdom and foresight, realized that if you strip and deprive the people who are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty of their ability to defend their liberties, then slavery, tyranny, despotism, but above all, oppression is what develops in the country. It is the residue that is left behind. We see this with all of the tin-pot dictators that ever came into power. They always move to ban firearms. And in fact, just recently in Venezuela, a country that has been ruled by dictators such as Hugo Chavez until he passed away and went straight to hell, and now whatever their socialist leader is, they have completely banned the private ownership of firearms. And yet there is an element here in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave that wishes to do that as well. And therefore, what we have to do as independent, free-thinking American citizens or popular sovereigns is to ask why there is this segment of our population or of our culture that comes out in the immediate wake and aftermath of all of these senseless and unspeakable tragedies in order to seek a political advantage, in order to force a dark, twisted, and depraved political agenda against the American people. Again, it cannot be about power. It cannot be about safety or security. It's about power. It's about manipulation and control. Why? They are greedy for control, and they realize that if they were to really try and compete in the free marketplace, or if there was an ability for the American people to resist them, they'd never be able to secure power. The left has done this all over the world. Anywhere that socialism basically sets its roots as this ugly, poisonous ideology, they seek to limit the ability of the people to think and act and to defend themselves. Why? Again, It comes down to ultimate power. I'm reminded of the old adage, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. I'm reminded of this because that is what these dark, twisted, and dare I say, nefarious forces, these agent provocateurs of tyranny and despotism, but above all oppression, are always seeking to do. It's always about themselves. It's hyper-politicization anywhere and everywhere that it can be attempted. And that is what they do. They don't back down from it. They never move away from it. And you see, they try and do it in increments. The Fabian society, which traces its origins back to 19th century Great Britain, is all about doing things in incremental fashion, increment after increment, drip by drip, until they have finally managed to obliterate the ability of the people of their targeted society to act in an autonomous, self-reliant fashion. And they do this because they want the people to be reliant upon the government. In other words, they think the government is an end-all, be-all solution to any and all problems that we encounter as a nation and people. We do this and we fight this because we are just facing everything that is a major problem for us. And it comes down to all of these things that have been against us, all of these forces who operate against us. And again, we ask ourselves, for what purpose? The purpose is as it has always been. Purpose is to act against the American people. Rick Scott and those guys are doing everything within their power to try and manipulate circumstances because they think they can walk both sides of the issue. They think they can come forth and, leave us in this disparate position, to leave us in a weakened spot. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's contrary to the clear and concise language within our shared Constitution. Now, folks, I know this is short, and I know that it's been a long time since I've done an episode. I'm getting back into the swing of things. I had a recurring bout of bronchitis after suffering from the flu last year, so I'm getting back into the swing of things. So I basically discussed everything that I wanted to in this episode, and so I'm going to go ahead and draw it to a close. Folks, thanks again for flying with us. Be sure to check out the Cafe Press account because there's all those goodies there. And I promise to have another episode up soon. We'll see you again next time. Please do take care.